There are 10 key design elements that I use in every space. They weren't exactly intentional in the beginning, but as I've designed more spaces throughout my life, whether it's my home or when I was in school, I've kind of picked up these elements that I've noticed I implement in every single project. These are the things that I think make a space look really good. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I love color, pattern, florals. So there's gonna be a lot of that in here. So if you like that, keep on watching. One of the first things I think of when designing a new space is the patterns that are going to go in that space. I'm a huge fan of patterns. I think you can never really have too many, and I honestly couldn't see a world where I live in a home without some type of pattern. When I was first picking out pieces to go in our living room, I started with the coffee table. I knew I wanted this large floral coffee table, and I knew I wanted to make it myself. So I hunted down different fabrics that I thought would look good, eventually landing on this one. I think I got it from fabricguru.com. I wanted a pattern that was on a dark background, whether that was black or brown, just something dark. I knew these colors were neutral enough in my mind to base the rest of the living room on. It has some of my favorite shades. There's pink, there's yellow, there's seafoam green, and I knew that was a great foundation to start on. So after that, I chose the rug, and I knew I wanted a striped rug. I feel like stripes go with absolutely everything. I am a stripe lover. I always have been, and I probably always will be. I really feel like striped rugs are kind of underrated. I don't think you see them enough. I know it can seem like daunting because it's a pattern, but look into striped rugs. I feel like you might like it more than you think you would. And this rug has similar colors in it to the coffee table pattern, so it's kind of perfect. So right there, you have two patterns. You have a more classic pattern with the stripes, and then a more traditional English pattern with the floral. When I'm choosing patterns, I definitely err on the side of English traditional, pretty much for everything. That's like my go-to. I love chintz. I love anything dainty, but also really large florals, such as the chair I'm sitting in has like a vine pattern to it, which is a little bit smaller. And I think this complements the room really well. It's also a lighter color, so I don't think it stands out too much. Since I am a craft lover and I love a DIY, I knew I wanted to make pillows for this space as well. So I went on Liberty.com, of course. I love Liberty. They're known for their floral patterns. So I chose a floral pattern that still had that green in it, because green is, I think, like the perfect neutral. So I chose this kind of ditzy floral from their website. It has yellow, it has green, and it is one of my favorite objects in my home, without a doubt. I don't know why, but it brings me so much joy. If you're looking to get into patterns, I think pillows are a very safe place to start. They're not permanent, they're small, you can switch them out. It's not going to be a giant investment that you make. So I would recommend starting with pillows, and you can kind of pick out the rest of your decor based on the colors in that pillow, which is exactly what I did. I've also talked about the blue cobalt pillow I have from Stoff Studios. Again, it's a more subtle, it's not really a pattern. I would say it's more of like a print. And that was also something I had in my mind at the very beginning. So it just kind of goes to show that mixing patterns can be a lot easier than you think. My go-to formula is stripes, large floral, small floral, and a more graphic print. So that would be the rug, the coffee table, the ditzy floral pillow, and the large printed blue pillow. So that's kind of my go-to formula if you're looking to start with patterns. The next element I can't live without is mixing timeless pieces with modern pieces. As I just mentioned, I love classic traditional English home decor. For some reason, it just speaks to me. I love everything about it. But I do still like to mix it with more modern pieces. I've mentioned before that my couch and my armchair are from West Elm, which West Elm in general, not my style, but these two pieces are great. I don't think they're too modern or too trendy or boho. They're kind of just perfect neutral base layers for the rest of the home. I also love that the edges are kind of sharp. that kind of look like pillows, if that makes sense. It's not like a roll arm, it's not a square arm, it's just kind of like I don't know how to describe it. It kind of looks like the edge of a pillow. But I think this couch and this chair were honestly the best choices I could have made because, like I said, they're not too much of anything. I think they add the perfect amount of modern touch to go with my chintzy coffee table and all the other elements that I love, and like vintage oil paintings and this rocking chair. I think they are great base foundation pieces, and I think that they would work in any home I live in. Even if one day down the line I wanted to get the blue chair reupholstered, I easily could because I feel like it's such a great shape. Adding like a fun frilly skirt to it and a pattern on it could easily make it more of that English style if I had other modern elements to go with it. I think even if you don't personally love English style, I think you could still do this. I always kind of resort back to mid-century modern as an example just because it's so opposite of what I like, but it's a great example because that uses a lot of wood tones, a lot of sharp geometric shapes, and since that style is already very modern, I think mixing that with something a little more frilly or something from a different area of the world or time frame will always look good. Personally, I love the look if someone has a mid-century house, they mix it with like folk art. I think that looks so good. My third element that I cannot live without is contrasting colors. I've mentioned before how our dining table is called Sommelier from Sherwin-Williams, and it's this really, really deep burgundy, and then our dining chairs are a really pretty grass green. And in my opinion, that combo is incredible. I love purple and green together. I think any contrasting color is going to look good. If it's the right shade and tone, you might not want to do like bright teal and bright orange. That could be really spooky looking. But if you had a couch like mine that's like a warm tan and then a cobalt blue pillow, then it would look really good. I think it's all about the tones and shades you use of these contrasting colors. It can be really hard to do, but when you get it right, it just works. I will always be a fan of this. I know the unexpected red theory was huge on TikTok a couple of years ago. I'm still doing it. I think a pop of red will always look good. And if you have lighter walls like us, this is called Contented from Sherwin-Williams. This is like a nice green blue color mixed with that red shade. Looks so good because if I did everything in muted cool tones like this wall color, it would look so sad in here. But mixing contrasting colors with this wall color brings it to life. I also think you can make a space more dull if you make everything the same color family. It can just get very flat, and I've talked about flatness so much on this channel, but it's because I think you should avoid that at all costs. It's always nice to have some type of contrast. It helps the eye flow through the space. Basically, it just makes the space look more intentional, which I think is always the goal. My fourth tip, maybe you're not really wanting to mix patterns. Hey, I understand it. It is not for everyone. But maybe you want a pattern in your home. If you're going to do that, I would do one focal pattern and pick colors from that. One of my favorite videos on the internet, I literally watched it this morning. It's like just my comfort video, is Matilda Goad's home tour. She also did a series with House and Garden going through her home renovation. It's incredible if you haven't watched it. I watch it probably too often. I am a huge fan of her. I feel like we have very similar styles. So in that video, she talked about how she has this chaise lounge that she got in a floral print, which by the way, Liberty has a print that looks like that. And I, of course, will be getting a yard. She was saying how she kind of picked and pulled colors from that chaise lounge to dictate the rest of her living room, which I have done the same thing. Like I mentioned with my coffee table, I picked colors from there that kind of based the rest of the space on. I think this is one of the easiest ways to get into color and pattern if you don't know where to start. And if you're buying a fabric, they usually have on like the very edge of the fabric the colors that were used in that print. So you can have an exact reference point of what colors are in that fabric if it's kind of hard to tell. And you can take that, take a photo of it, go shopping, and it's so much easier to figure out, okay, what would go with this pattern? Because sometimes it's hard to remember what exactly it looks like in your head when you're out and about. The fifth element I love is handmade art. I've mentioned this before, but I love an oil painting. I love a kid's drawing. I love anything that is handmade, not mass produced. I am not a fan of the mass produced art. I think there are so many ways you can get art out there that, picking something up from the store might not be the best option. I will always be an advocate for going to your local thrift store, antique mall, vintage shop, whatever, and just kind of digging through old pieces. My husband and I, months ago, I think it was like a year ago, went to a paper store, and that's where I got my 2 vintage horse drawings, and they were just like loose leaf paper in a box, but I knew they felt so special, and I was like, with the right frame, these would be so cool. So even if the piece isn't perfectly framed, don't be afraid to get creative and kind of think outside your box, because it can be daunting to pick the right frame for a piece of art. But personally, I love to go with a modern frame if it's like a really vintage piece, depending on the piece. But if it's like a fun kids drawing, I think it's really fun to just have like a clean, simple white frame. Also kind of draws more attention to the art because the frame isn't really distracting. That's just what I do. Or I also love an unframed canvas. I have this in our dining area. I got that original oil painting from an antique vault and I just loved it. And then opposite to it, I have a piece that I did in high school on cardboard with like oil pastels. And again, it's not framed and I think it looks really fun. So my advice for finding handmade art was to look in places that you normally wouldn't. Sometimes when you're in a thrift store, you go to the clothes, you kind of peruse the home section, but I would advise you to kind of look with a more critical eye and find something that normally you might not go for. Picture it in a different frame, or if it's just the frame that you love, picture a different piece of art in it. I think that's something that adds so much character to a home. Going along with that, my next tip is floral imagery or art. Again, I love florals, I love floral art, I love flowers. I have to have a floral print in every room of the house, and I'm gonna keep it going. I can't stop. And I don't think I want to stop. To me, florals are just like the epitome of fun and, like I said, lightheartedness. Even if you're not like a floral girl and you're just like not vibing with floral prints, that's okay. Get yourself some flowers. This is an obvious tip, like go get flowers. But seriously, they look good in every space. When I don't have flowers in my home, I feel like it looks dull, but adding like a nice bouquet from Trader Joe's, from the grocery store, it's just fun. And if you get like a really cool vase, it always looks good. Always. No matter where you live, no matter who you are. The next tip. I have talked about this before. I think I talked about it in my last video, but I'm going to continue talking about it because I love it that much. And it's primary colors. I feel like as a society, we don't talk about primary colors enough. It's seen as juvenile, not adult and classy, but I am here to say that's not true. I love primary colors. I'm going to say it again and again, but you have to do it in a way that's not giving preschool classroom. How do you do that? This is how. You get different shades. You get different shades of blue, of yellow, of red. The options are endless. Those 3 colors are incredible. And I encourage you to try them out in your home. Even if you live in a gray box apartment, get yourself a red picture frame. Get yourself a teal pillow, a mustard yellow bowl to put on your dining table. You don't have to paint your walls blue or get a red dresser. Small elements like that look so fun. I use primary colors in pretty much every room of this house. I just think they bring so much life into a room. I personally think those colors are really easy to work with. Like our light fixtures, this bright yellow, and then I have pops of blue, I have red. I just think it looks so good, and there's so many ways to use those colors. Like I said, you don't have to deck your house out in primary colors, but just implementing those 3 colors, see how you like it, and build your way from there. The next tip, whimsical touches. I love anything whimsical and fun. I basically want to be a little kid again. I love objects that have no real purpose. It's fun. It's literally fun, okay? There's nothing I love more than looking for a handmade clay object at a thrift store. You can actually find so many of these. They're usually at Goodwills. It's like handmade art projects from kids that the parents just don't want anymore, but I want them and I'm gonna take them. I love how no one else is gonna have that piece. It's unique, it's fun, it's sculptural. You don't have to go crazy and get like a bunch of tchotchkes. That's not what I'm talking about, but like intentionally curated handmade items look so good. There are so many famous interior designers who do this. You see home tours in Architectural Digest where they have a super cool modern kitchen or dining table and they have just like a little sculptural object on the table and instantly it's more fun. Instantly there's more personality, it's more interesting. I just think it's so much better than getting something from like Zara Home, which no offense to Zara Home, but everyone else is going to have that. You know what I mean? I think it's fun to kind of find your own thing, and going to thrift stores is the easiest way to do that, and it's not going to break the bank. My second to last tip is a mix of textures. I think every single space needs a mix of textures, whether it's a jute rug and a velvet couch, or a cane chair and a mohair chair. I think it's really important to do a mixture of different things. It kind of levels up your space and makes it look way more intentionally designed. It's also just so much more interesting than everything kind of being the same. For instance, like when Boucle was like having its heyday, when everything was covered in white Boucle, it was not a great time. I would see people with Boucle couches, Boucle armchairs. It also just makes the space look so boring, in my opinion. I remember when I first watched Dakota Johnson's home tour, she talked about how her couch is a crushed mohair. It's like one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. That's like a dream of mine to have something mohair. And I think if she didn't go with that interesting fabric and she went with a leather, it really would not help the space because her home is this like true mid-century California hillside home that's like perfect in every way, which by the way, Pearson Ward, the design duo, designed her home, which I'm obsessed with them, and I think they make incredible choices. So the fact that they chose that mohair instead of a leather made the world of a difference. I think it's important not to lean into one type of design all the way because it can almost look like a movie set, but not in a good way. Like it doesn't feel like someone actually lives here, if that makes sense. And this goes for textures as well. If everything is the same, it just doesn't work. There's nothing to guide your eye across. So as I was saying, if she did a leather couch, it would look very like on the nose mid-century, and that's just not what you want. I think if I did everything in this house in a chintz print, it would be like, okay, like, does a grandma live here or a 24-year-old? You know what I mean? So mix your textures and make sure the materials aren't faux because that is never really gonna look good. However, like my couch is technically velvet, but it doesn't really look like it. It's kind of like a suede. I would just avoid the faux leather, the faux, like really, really faux velvet that you see on like Wayfair. It's just not good. It kind of cheapens the whole place. There's nothing worse than a faux leather couch, like a cheap faux leather couch. And trust me, I'm on a budget too, but I think there are ways to go about that without looking like you're on a budget, if you know what I mean. That's just my 2 cents on materials. The last element I cannot live without, I had it in every space, is at least one warm toned element. For us, that's our couch and our dining area, that nice warm burgundy color. I am someone who, as I said, loves color. I love pastels and primary colors, but you gotta have something to warm it up. If you're not someone who loves wood tones, which I do, I'm getting into more wood tones with like my frames of my art and things like that. But if you're not someone who wants everything to be wood, I think it's important to look for something, if it's a fabric or paint, that is warm. Every space needs something warm toned. And I think this is especially helpful if, like I said earlier, you live in a gray box apartment. I used to live in a gray box apartment. Those things are not easy to design, but if you look for something that matches your style but adds warmth, I think it's really going to help your space. There's nothing worse than a space that looks cold and it looks not comfortable, like you can't sit down and get cozy. I don't love that. I think this is especially helpful if your home or apartment doesn't get a lot of light, a lot of natural light. Having everything cool toned is literally going to suck the life out of you. It can be through vintage art, like warm wood frames, pillows, a rug. A rug is a really great way to add warmth because it's just a huge block of color. Those are the design elements I use in every single space. I cannot live without them. I would love to know if any of you try these in your space and how it worked out for you. I really feel like you can't go wrong with any of these, and if you mix them all together, you're gonna have a great space. At the end of the day, I think it's important to remember to have a really great balance in your space, finding things that feel very unique to you, getting inspirations from a plethora of different places. I think all those elements mixed together, you're destined to have a really great, true to you home or living space. So I hope you guys found that helpful. If you have any other questions or types of videos you want me to film, please feel free to leave a comment because I'm always looking for new videos that you guys actually want to see. So let me know. And I think that's about it. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye.